everyone, and welcome to the Women of Xbox UK podcast. I'm your host, Charleyy, from the Xbox UK team, and as you're probably well aware by now, I will be shortly joined by another amazing woman from within the world of games. Whether you're watching live on YouTube or listening on one of our many wonderful podcast hubs, sit back and get comfy because it's time to have a good old chat with the director of Gaming for Everyone, Katy Jo Wright. Hello there, Katy.
Hello, Charleyy.
How are you doing today? I'm aware it's first thing in the morning for you. Is it a good day so far?
I'm alive. I'm above ground. I cannot complain. So, yep, doing good. And I get to start out the day with you.
Very specific.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not in Fallout, so everything's good.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Count your blessings, right?
Exactly. Now, before we get into the meat of the podcast, I would love for you to give an elevator pitch of who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. My name is Katy Jo Wright. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm pretty sure the coolest job in Xbox, which is I'm the director of Gaming for Everyone, and Gaming for Everyone is all about how do we make Xbox a place where everyone has fun.
As is the title, Gaming for Everyone. Nice and simple.
That's the elevator pitch. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's have a top-line view of you as a gamer then, shall we? At the start of every podcast, we ask everyone 5 really quick questions about who you are, your favourites, etc., etc. You have to answer as quick as possible. First thing that comes to your mind, are you ready?
Why did my palms just get a little sweaty? But yes, I think I am ready. Let's go.
Okay, here we go. Question 1. What is the first game you ever remember playing?
First game. I would say it was a, Texas Instrument computer. Mm-hmm. Had the disc cartridge going in on the right. The TI-99 is what it was. And we played Space Invaders.
Wow. I mean, that is a classic, in fairness.
Yeah. I don't even barely remember what it looks like now, but I know that was the game that me and my brother used to fight over playing at the beginning. Space Invaders, and then we moved up to the Apple IIc.
Perfect. Okay, question 2. What is, without a doubt, the best game you've ever played?
Ever played,
yeah.
So 2 things come to mind real quick. First one, instinctually, was Frogger, way back on Nintendo, yes. many hours spent playing Frogger. But I think the best game for the overall experience, I would say, was Never Alone. And that is on Xbox. And that was, I don't know if you've played that game, but it is, so it's a 2D puzzle game. And it's about this little girl, Nuna, and a fox. And they're going, but just the storyline itself is beautiful. But I played it couch co-op with my stepson, and he was 14 at the time. Mm-hmm. And it's a really collaborative game. Oh, so lovely. It was something fun for us to be able to do. But then the best part about it was, to me, was the storytelling. So it's about this tribe, and it was made with Alaska Natives and with the Inuit tribe. And it's about the stories from their tribe that have been told for generations to generations. And so as you solve a puzzle, like a video comes in, or one of their mythology characters comes in and tells you and passes along these stories and helps you along. So my stepson and I were sitting there playing, having fun, learning, collaborating together, but then also learning about this culture, which was amazing. So that stands out as the overall favorite game from the experience that it brought.
Okay, cool. That immediately is going in my basket. I want to try that. That sounds brilliant. Yeah. You've sold me. Okay, question 3 then. What is a game that you love but wish more people had played or even knew about?
That one for me is easier right now. It's called Fractured Minds, and it was made by Emily Mitchell. She was 17 years old, and won some awards in the UK.
It was BAFTA, I believe,
it's a game. Yes, yep, exactly. It's a game that she made to kind of represent her experience with severe anxiety. Mm-hmm. But again, another puzzle game. So you can maybe see a theme that I like puzzle games. But it was another puzzle game. But I think right now, especially with this pandemic and everything, just for people to play it and feel not alone, of that other people are going through it, but also being able to have some sense of accomplishment as you're going through the game. So I just love that game. And I think it's so amazing that Emily created it the way that she did. So
and she was a teenager when she made it as well, right?
17.
She was super young, yeah.
17 and like super
Wild.
nervous about making a game. And like, so you think about imposter syndrome and all of that stuff, like she had it, yet still did it and launched this game to the world. And I just think that like, it's so cool. And it's a fun game too.
Yeah.
So,
and by the way, anyone listening, if you've not played it, it's on Game Pass right now, and you can get all the achievements in less than an hour just by focusing on the story. So 100% check that one out. Great recommendation,
nice
Katie.
plug.
I know.
Plug.
Thank you. It's almost like I work for Xbox. Wild, isn't
I know.
it? Okay, question
I should have
4.
known that.
What is the one game that made you rage the hardest?
Rage the hardest.
Yeah, you know, that one that really made you go. Which one?
Hyperdot. I don't know if you've played this game, also in Game Pass, I will say that.
Yes.
But this game, it is about dodging things, and I'm also a very competitive person, grew up playing a lot of sports. But this game, it's so funny, when I was playing it, and I was actually sick at the time, but I'm playing it, and I was upstairs, and my husband, and I'm like, I like yell when I like get killed, and I was freaking out, and my husband came running upstairs, he's like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, wow, this game, and he's like, seriously, like that was because you're playing a game? And I was like, oh, but you don't understand. And I just like went into the whole thing. But yeah, Hyperdot, definitely, like Hyperdot and Tetris. Now Tetris Effect,
God,
especially
Tetris.
when you can play it with the sound.
Yeah,
Ooh,
don't get me started on Tetris. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right, to end on a positive note, I do think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to let you go, all right? I want to know who your favorite video game character and or villain is.
So yes, my favorite is Kate Diaz from Gears 5.
Thought so.
She is, yes, oh, she's
she's
my
favorite.
This. Yeah, nice. She's just, I just love Kate because she's so just badass, right? So she's just can take care of herself, but like in such a definitive and powerful way. But yet she has her mind set up to things and she will go after it even if it's not popular or whatever. But she's just, and the whole Gears 5 team. So we, worked with them and the work that they did putting into Gears 5. I'm just such a fan of. So even though it's not a puzzle game, like I really enjoyed playing Gears 5. And Kate
for
is
her.
Just
Exactly.
a badass. Yes,
wonderful. Now, if anyone is listening on any of our audio platforms, you would have just missed a wonderful picture there of yourself sort of lusting after Kate. So make sure you come and join us over on YouTube for any more wonderful clips and features we will be showing throughout. But I do have one final question for you. So every episode we are asking our guests to pass on a question to our next guest. So the ever so wonderful Shannon Loftus would like to ask you... Well, it's actually, now I read it, she's not even posed it as a question. Typical Shannon. She wants you to talk about the best moment of your career, specifically the one thing that is the reason that you do and gets you out of bed in the morning.
Dang, Shannon, that's a tough question. It's called the Explore Microsoft program. So it is like a pre-internship. So it's like for freshmen and sophomores in college. But I was me and one other recruiter started that program back in like 2004, I think it was. But at the time I was in recruiting, and we were seeing college graduation rates for computer science students drastically declining. And then when you looked at females and students of color, it was declining even faster. And so our recruiting leadership kind of said to me and one other recruiter said, hey, can you guys go figure out what's happening and why? And so we did all this stuff and we ultimately landed on the Explore Microsoft program, but it's still a program around today. And when I go and speak to explorers, which is what we call them when they're here in the summer,
I love that.
I've gone and spoken with them, and the stories that people tell me about how that experience has changed their life and got them into tech. And because we figured out why they were dropping out before they even got a job. So hearing the stories of people that are in tech now and that was their on-ramp into tech, that just like makes me incredibly proud to have been a part of starting it, but then it's all them. So it's like really kind of clearing the runway for them. So I think starting the Explore Microsoft program is probably a career highlight.
Yeah, it sounds it, hugely so. And I mean, hopefully we unpick it a little bit more as we now do transition into the rest of the podcast. So I did have a really similar conversation with Shannon when we spoke a couple of weeks ago. And it's kind of wild how many guests on this podcast have referenced yourself and Shannon throughout the whole series so far. And it's very clear that you've been a huge source of inspiration for so many people in the industry. So I'm just going to start straight off by congratulating and thanking you right there. But before we unpack who you are today, I want to get to know the KJ from way back in the day. We've heard you're competitive. You've heard about gaming with your brother. So let's kick it back. And I want to know about you as a very young gamer and how this all started.
Yeah, so I grew up, I'm one of 4 kids. So I have 2 older sisters that are 18 months apart, and then there's 5 years, and then me and my brother are 18 months apart. And so I, a lot of times, was playing with my brother because my older sisters were too cool for us. And so, yeah, my brother, his name is Billy. We grew up playing a lot of sports. Then a lot of times we played the same sports. We were very competitive with each other. When it comes to video games, I can remember playing games when we were younger. Like, as I mentioned, on the Texas Instrument, then on the Apple IIc, we would like race out of the car when we got home from school to see who could get to the computer first to play Cubert. And then on Nintendo, and we, played a lot of Super Mario Brothers and Zelda, and then I don't know why, but I stopped playing games. And now once I came to gaming about 6 years ago, I thought a lot about that. Like, why did I stop? And I have no idea why. We just went outside. And I think maybe my mom kicked us out and was like, you guys got to get outside.
I love the idea that the door was closed behind you and that was it. No more computers, no more Cuba. That was it.
No, it was like, get outside. And so we always played outside. We were in the streets playing in the neighborhood. And so that was a lot of my growing up and playing a lot of sports. I played almost anything that I could.
Really?
And got hurt quite a bit. But I'm very stubborn. So I am a Irish, I was raised Catholic and Taurus. So when you think of like stubbornness, those are...
There it is.
So, yep. So I would play, even if I started feeling hurt, I would keep playing. Like I was too stubborn to stop. And so I would end up hurting myself quite a bit.
What kind of sports did you play? What were we doing to cause this many injuries?
I played soccer, basketball, tennis, I swam. But then a lot of the injuries just came from games we made up in the street. Like dodgeball or something like that. But then as I got older, I played flag football at Microsoft. Actually, I played in our Microsoft flag football league. So as an adult, and I still got hurt, but I still played. And that was super fun. But did a little boxing, kind of just like I'll kind of do anything and everything. I love being active in sports.
I was gonna say, it's interesting that sort of competitive vibe never stuck with gaming with your brother. Then it was a case of you found sport and then you moved on, really.
Yeah, and it's so weird because I think back about it, and so did he. He didn't really play video games anymore either. He played out, so we were both like outside. And so it's so weird because then when I joined gaming, and I would think like I've had an Xbox since the 360 because I've been at Microsoft 22 years, almost 22 years. This September will be 22 years.
Huge.
Blows my mind because I was not, I tried not to come to Microsoft actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But so I've had an Xbox since the beginning, even with a gold membership, but I used it to like watch Netflix and Hulu and play DVDs, my workout videos, but I never launched a game. And when I joined gaming, I was like, why is that? And I the only things that I could come up with as to why I didn't was because I'm not really a fan of first-person shooters.
Sure.
And a lot of sports games, I would rather go play it myself than play on the video game or on the console. Yeah. And so and that's what I thought Xbox was. But once I joined the org and saw like games like Never Alone, I was like, if I would have known there were games like that this whole time, then I probably would have been playing, I probably would have never stopped. Well, That's probably not true because I don't know why I stopped. It wasn't because of the games when I stopped. So I'm having a little internal dialogue here.
I'm loving witnessing, I won't lie.
But yeah. But so I probably would have played games again a lot earlier had I known the vast range of games that you can play.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that I'm kind of getting off tangent of like growing up, and
you're absolutely not getting on tangent. I think this lends pretty well into where I wanted to go next, which was, as you say, the sort of the non-gamer that moves into the gaming space. And I'd love to unpack that sort of process in your mind a little bit more. So, I mean, if there was a moment at Microsoft or in any other tech you want to mention first before you get there, I'm really keen to know how this fundamentally shifted from someone who defines herself as a non-gamer to someone who's the director of gaming for everyone. So I think there's a piece along the way we need to unpack, you know?
Yeah, so I'll even just say real quick the roles then I've had at Microsoft. So I started in recruiting. I spent my first 5 years there, but that's all about interacting with people, right? And I love like hearing other people's stories and helping them get to a place that they want to go and finding that match. And then when I moved to the team, it was then called the career model team. It doesn't even exist anymore. But we built what's called a talent platform or talent architecture to help employees figure out what does a career path look like, and then help us as a business identify what kind of talent we want to grow or what's the skill set that we want employees to have to as they grow in leadership. But again, at that point, it was kind of identifying what are the needs of the business and what are the needs of the employees and how do we best match them up. And then from there, I moved to our global diversity and inclusion team. But actually, while I was on that last job, I went to grad school. And I got my master's in organizational design and development, which is really all about how do you design and lead large scale but systemic change.
That sounds about right.
Like
yeah.
Culture change. And then I moved to the diversity and inclusion team. And that's where I really thought that was my last stop at Microsoft. Because when I started at Microsoft, I sat down the hall from that team and I was like, wait, what? That's a job? People get paid for that? Like,
it's brilliant, right?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I was so confused. But I was like, but I'm working on that team someday. So it took about 10 years before I actually did land on that team. But then I really thought that was going to be my last job at Microsoft. But IEB, or Interactive Entertainment Business, which is where Xbox sat, was one of the groups that I worked with. So I was their D&I manager, was my title at the time.
I'll tell you what, very quickly, for anyone, because I'm very aware of this term, but for anyone who's listening, what does D&I stand for?
Diversity and inclusion.
Thank you
very much. That was very inclusive of you.
I am so aware of how many acronyms I use in my day job that sometimes I'm talking to my other half about PSM and all of this, and he's like, Charleyy, please stop. I don't know what you're saying anymore.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So thank you. So I was on our diversity and inclusion team, and gaming was one of the teams that I worked with, and Phil Spencer was the exec sponsor for diversity and inclusion at that time.
Love it.
So I got to know Phil like way back a long time ago, but I knew what kind of leader he was. But when I hit my 15-year mark within the company, I really was about to leave. Like I had one foot out the door. I was tired of a lot of things within the company. And the culture and just, I was really tired. And I was like, I've been here 15 years. Time for me to go try something else. But then Satya became CEO. And I knew what kind of leader he was. And I was like, this could be interesting. And then I started having these conversations with Xbox, with the team itself. And there was a group of leaders, and Shannon was one of them.
Hey, Shannon's on another episode.
We were meeting and we were talking about how do we do D&I differently? I'm using air quotes there because, like, what does that even mean, right? But there was a lot of they were having a lot of similar frustrations. And so it all kind of started talking about what's working and what's not working with how we as individuals, but also we as a company do D&I.
Yeah.
And so one thing led to another. And then at one point, then I really did start saying, okay, I'm going to leave because this kind of doing this side gig is what I was calling it at the time with Xbox, really became like my night job. And I was like, I can't have two jobs right now, two Microsoft jobs. Like one is enough. But then one thing led to another, and they opened up a role. And so I came and joined gaming. But it was funny when they're like, what if we open a full-time role? I'm like, but I'm not a gamer. And they were like, exactly. And I was like,
Oh.
Because I also, when we think about as an organization, we believe that play is a fundamental human need, right? And I absolutely believe that to my core.
Oh,
so
definitely.
but what does play mean? And then what does it even mean to be a gamer? I started asking people when I did join the org. So clearly I joined what later turned into, or about 6 months later, we launched Gaming for Everyone. But as I joined, I kept asking people, because everyone kept talking about, this is for hardcore gamers or casual gamers. And I was like, hey, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, totally.
What do you mean? What's a hardcore gamer? And people are like, well, they're hardcore. I'm like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right?
What
is it
that?
based on what kind of game they play, how long they play, how long they've been playing, on what device they play? Like, what do you mean by hardcore gamer? And they'd be like, well, I mean, I guess it's, how long they play, like how often they play. I'm like, okay, so my 72-year-old grandma who plays 14 hours of solitaire a week, like she's a hardcore gamer?
Right there.
And they're like, no, that doesn't count. Solitaire doesn't count. I'd be like, well, what do you mean? You just said
exactly
that it's the number of games or number of hours. And so it really kind of became very clear that we don't have an understanding, a common or shared understanding of what we mean by hardcore or casual or even a gamer. And so that it really started questioning. Well, we started asking a lot of questions across the org and in different ways. And then it was like, and who really are we going after? And it's really anyone who enjoys play.
Yeah.
Which
absolutely.
Is every human. So it's not about targeting one type of gamer. It is about how do we really make Xbox a place where everyone can have fun. And it's not about making every game for everyone, because then that'd be vanilla and be boring. No
and also there are some people who
vanilla.
don't want to play other games that other people like to. So my other half will play FIFA all day and is a hardcore FIFA player. I don't want to go near FIFA, but he doesn't want to go near Forza and stuff like that. So you can't appeal everything to everyone.
Exactly. Then that just gets super boring. And so and even to the same person though, like if I have a great day at work, I want to play one type of game. If I have a not so awesome day at work, I might want to play a totally different game. Playing with the kiddos, totally different game. Playing with cocktails, totally different game, right? So even how do you define me as a gamer
100%.
Has that full spectrum. And so it's really how do we make sure that whenever anyone comes to gaming or comes to Xbox specifically, that they can find the type of game they're looking for that day. And so really it's just been about kind of expanding who we think, not about forgetting anyone, but it's about making that experience amazing for as many people as possible.
100%. So, I mean, this is the perfect segue, talking about gaming for everyone. We do have a clip from E3 2016 of the very first time you were sort of introduced as this role. So again, if you're listening to the audio version, head over to YouTube with this exact timestamp. We're going to watch this for a little bit, then we'll come back and we'll talk over the top. But I think this is a really important moment to share with everyone.
We're so serious about the movement, we've actually made it somebody's full-time job, and that's what Katy Jo does. She actually gets to do it day in and day out. I think it's the coolest job in the world, and I'm really excited to have her here with me at E3 to
He's
talk
right.
about it.
Fantastic. Katy Jo is the head of the movement.
That's right.
I love this. All right, Katy Jo. So you're responsible for building features like clubs directly into Xbox Live. Can you tell us about how you're doing that and what kind of impact it's going to have on making a more inclusive experience for gamers?
Yeah, sure. So like what Dave was saying, the core of Gaming for Everyone is really about making Xbox a place where everyone can have fun. And fun means different things to different people. And so we really want to, the way that we can bring that to life and really enable that is by creating choice and customization in your overall gaming experience. And so some of the ways that we've been talking about it this week is like with clubs and LFG, which is really about creating that welcoming and safe place online where you can choose who you play with, how you play, and even what games we play. And then you can extend that choice we've been thinking about extending that choice through different content principles.
Can I just say that this is amazing, not just to see you talking about this in 2016, but to feel the effects of this conversation and what you started 5 years ago still echoing true today. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of a trip to like look at that and see even some of the things that I'm actually still saying, still part of like what we believe. And we're just doing it and have more examples of it coming to life across the organization. And that's kind of funny. That was the OG.
I was going to
branding.
say, that is stunning. If you have one of them spare, I can send you my address. Just let me know.
That was Chris Hunter's magic she was on the hardware team. Chris Hunter pulled those together. Yes, that was awesome.
Got my eyes on you, Chris. Right, okay, so let's talk about sort of what was day one, new role, new team. What was it that you wanted to do differently? What was the direction that you stormed in and went, right, this is how we're doing it?
Wow. So many things, but so many things that I wanted to do right out of the gate. But a big part of, like, even going back to what my master's degree is, and how do you create long-term change that's going to really last?
And not going to happen overnight. No.
Address the system. And in order for us to be able to talk about it externally, it needed to feel true internally. And we really were far from it feeling true internally. So that's why we didn't talk about that. That clip you just showed was the first time that we talked about gaming for everyone externally, but we had already been hard at work internally for about a year and a half. And so internally, we really started with understanding how we talk, what decisions are being made, or more, not necessarily what, but I guess somewhat, how decisions are being made, what really is kind of important to us, and what do we want to stand for. But we had also just gone through a lot of organizational change. But then there was also a lot of things happening in the industry. So like Gamergate had just kind of hit its peak. I don't want to say happened because it.
I ain't wasted any more breath on that. People know about Gamergate, and if they don't know, look into it, but prepare yourself. It's a world that simply does not exist anymore. We will say that.
There we go. I love it. But the dynamics of people wanting change. So that's the appetite that we started Gaming for Everyone in. People wanting change and really people across the organization. So it wasn't just like one group or another group, which is really why we wanted to call it Gaming for Everyone, and not a diversity and inclusion program. Because within the industry and even within Microsoft, those words mean something and have some historical baggage. We wanted to start fresh. We wanted to do things differently, which is really how the whole thing started to begin with. And so we didn't want to call it a D&I program because we wanted to try different things. And so from the very beginning, we've tried something. If it works, great, let's do more of it. If it doesn't, okay, let's take what we learned and let's move on to the next thing. But a big part was, how do we get people involved across the organization? How do we help them to see that by making these little changes in your product or in the experience that you're trying to create, you really open up the doors for more gamers and more people to enjoy your baby. Right?
I bet that was really eye-opening for a lot of people as well. And this is probably a really big question, but is there a way of, like, for those people who don't know what Gaming for Everyone looks like internally, is there a way of breaking it down, the teams that you work with, who you try to represent and empower? Let's start there.
Sure. There's like many different angles to it, right? When you think about driving systemic change, many different angles. A big piece, and it's been big from the beginning, has been what we call our Gaming for Everyone communities. And this is really a place where we try to create space for people to come and join others that are like them. And so we have 6 communities that we sponsor. And so they are women in gaming, Blacks in gaming, LGBTQIA in gaming, Latinx in gaming. I don't need to say in gaming every time.
But they are in gaming. This is true.
They are in gaming, yes. And then gaming and disability and Asians in gaming. But so for each of those, and some started, like women in gaming and Blacks in gaming had been around long before Gaming for Everyone. But it was really, how do we create the space and create the consistency for these communities to know that we are investing in them, but then also that their voices are heard. And so it provides a space for them to gather, but then also Gaming for Everyone is also a platform to amplify their voices and their lived experiences and how they're the same and how they're different within gaming and within the tech industry as a broader thing. But so we're really engaged in each of these communities internally and then also externally within the industry. So we have huge celebrations for them at GDC, when GDC happens in person. So miss that. That's been one of my favorite things about Gaming for Everyone is those GDC
I've never made
parties.
it to one, It's always been on my list to go to one sometime. Can I be your +1 and come in your suitcase?
You absolutely can. Done. Yes.
I tell you what, this whole podcast is just for me inviting myself to things with people.
Yeah. Hey, it's your platform.
Absolutely. This is the entire podcast is. I'm so sorry to tell you all, but this is all it is. I'm just adding up my contact book. I do want to ask you though about your Gaming for Everyone Giving Awards for Indie Devs, which is another initiative that you have. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so this was one this is one of my favorite things. In 2017, this is where the ID at Xbox team, so that's Chris Charleyy and Katie Stone-Perez on stage, and they were giving away, they named their award that year, Gaming for Everyone Award. And it was really highlighting 3 games that they represent brought new stories to the industry and new stories to gaming. And so those games were We Are Chicago, I Hope, and A Hero's Call. And so those 3 indie games won the award, but it was just really, really cool as a way of making a statement and celebrating that there are many, many stories to be told. And gaming is an incredible platform to tell those stories, and we want to help enable people who have different stories to tell. And so this was a way of celebrating through 3 really new stories that were coming to the platform that year.
Oh, I absolutely love it. And at this point, I'm going to spotlight the fact that Xbox UK this year, we'd sponsored a category in the Gaming Awards for the best LGBTQIA+ indie game. And it was phenomenal to work with them on that. And I know that the sort of vibe that they got from Xbox wanting to reach out when we have such a proud ID Xbox program. It just feels good to be working with people who just all want to have the same outcome in the community. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, and I think that's been one of my favorite things about Gaming for Everyone this entire time. It is almost like there was so much energy pent up in the organization with people all over that want to do it. They just either didn't know how or didn't feel like they had permission. And so I think me coming in as a non-gamer, I'm like, what do you mean? You don't need permission. Like, just
you want to do good? Just do it.
Yeah, here, open the door. And so there's so many people across the organization doing such cool things. And that's why when Graham was like, yeah, so I hear you did LFG in clubs. And I was like, no, I'm not on the engineering team. But that's an example of to do Gaming for Everyone or to deliver against our Gaming for Everyone vision. It really takes every single person across Team Xbox. It's not like me or even my team. It is really, how do we enable everyone? And so Clubs and LFG was that particular team within Xbox Live. That was them making Gaming for Everyone real. And so that's really when the magic happens, is when, now some language that we use internally is that we are all G4E. So G4E is how we abbreviate Gaming for Everyone. Because it's just too long.
And we do love an acronym.
Exactly. And we even put the number 4 in it. So it's G number 4E. But so it's that we are all G4E, because that's when we're really going to make Xbox a place where everyone has fun. When everyone kind of lives that and does it in their own way. Like, I don't know people's job. They used to come to me and they're like, oh, I'm all in. Like, I love Gaming for Everyone. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm like, that's not how this one's going to work. I can't tell you what to do. I don't know your job. And so I'll ask you questions and we can help figure it out, but you've got to figure it out and in your own authentic way and bring your own magic to this. And so that's where things were, and like, again, talking about Sea of Thieves, like that team talk about bringing their own magic, right? And they continue to bring it year after year. So we're talking about it in 2016, but they continue to bring it year after year. And just the way that they've created so many experiences that really open the doors for more people to enjoy gaming, but also just to make gaming their own. Like, I still love to be the pirate you want to be. Like that tagline.
Yeah.
They
nailed it, huh?
Yes, they totally did. Yeah.
So now I sort of want to unpick where you stand with the whole like adapting and inclusivity, and basically just get to like the proper grassroots of the whole thing. But at this point, I do have my little, and I can't wear it today though, because for some reason in England it's warm and I would melt if I wear this. But I just want you to know that this is my favorite piece of clothing of all time, and the amount of questions I've had when it comes to this essentially is me on an item of clothing. And I just want to make it clear to anyone who listens, like, Gaming for Everyone really does run across the sea, and Xbox UK are so with you, Katie, on everything you do. And I just wanted to show you this, basically.
I love that. I love that. That's another example though with the merch team.
Yes.
They took that and did that for Pride. And actually I have Pride, I have this little pin right here.
Oh, there it is.
Can you see that? It's the Pride pin.
Mm-hmm.
This pin they sold at E3, and it was the first pin that sold out across the board, but across all of Microsoft. And so and people were like, should we do a pin? Should we not? Should we? Did it? And it was the first one to sell out. So I love that. And then since it is Pride, I'm rocking my t-shirt.
Yes.
Since it is about to be Pride
really nice
in the
one,
US.
Though. I've never seen that one before. I want that one too.
This was from the team this year. The Team Xbox LGBTQIA community leads. They did this and rocked it. But since it's about to be Pride in the US, kicking off here, I had to rock it.
It's not. In fact, actually, when this episode is live, it will indeed be Pride Month. So happy Pride, everyone who's listening.
Happy Pride.
Hope you're very well. Say hello in chat. So yes, okay, let's go into the role itself then, and how this D&I, diversity inclusion, comes into every facet that you do. And one thing I really wanted to pick up, because we've spoken about this previously, but you have a particular Gears of War story that I would love for you to share with everyone.
Yes. This story, to me, epitomizes a lot of the mindset shift that we went through in the organization, because a lot of times D&I in the past is this, go to a training, go do this, go do that. But we're
it's just a box to tick, yeah.
Exactly. Gaming for Everyone is different, is it's about the product and how do we make the product more inclusive to anyone who wants to play. But so my Gears story is, actually this was when Gears of 5 work was kicking off, but I went up to the Coalition in Vancouver, Canada, and it's up from Seattle, north. So I went up there speaking to the whole studio, and I asked them, and Gaming for Everyone had been around maybe a year. And so starting the presentation, I asked them, how many of you have heard of Gaming for Everyone? Most people raise their hand. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I say, how many of you can tell me what Gaming for Everyone is? Maybe one or two hands went up, and I was like, okay, that's why I'm here. Here to talk about it, because this is me doing the road show across all teams to help people understand what it actually is. And so I said to them, I want you to picture a game in your mind that you think represents gaming for everyone. I gave them all a second, just kind of like you're doing now, and people did And I was like, okay, everyone got one? Good, cool. How many of you pictured Gears? And they sat back in their chair and they looked at each other and they were and I was like, seriously, nobody chose Gears? And now they're starting to giggle almost like little kids, oh my God, who is this woman? And has she ever played our game?
Am I in trouble?
And they're totally, they're nervous laughing. And I'm like, what do you mean nobody picked Gears? And I was like, oh, I totally think Gears is a Gaming for Everyone game. And now they're full on laughing at me. And I'm like, you have a badass woman character. You have a badass Black character, a badass Latinx character. I can customize the amount of gore. I can customize the amount of swearing. I can customize shooter assist. I can customize my experience in your game. And you have characters that are very positive representations of the diversity of the world that we live in today.
But they never thought of it, huh?
That is Gaming for Everyone. And they were
absolutely.
All of a sudden they were sitting up in their chairs. They're like, we're a part of this. And I'm like, hell yeah, you're a part of this. Yes, come on, let's do this. And so then it becomes so much more exciting, because again, it's not about making every game for everyone. It's about making a game that whoever wants to play can play it.
Can do so.
Making about where if you come to Xbox, you can find any type of game that you want to play. So a first-person shooter is not going to be for everyone. And that's fine. We don't need to make it for that game for everyone. But the tweaks that they did, and then they invested a ton of energy around this throughout the development of Gears 5. And it showed when it launched, from an accessibility perspective, from an inclusivity perspective, with all the pride flags throughout. Speaking of pride, the team up there just did such a phenomenal job of really leaning in. And what does it mean to make our game more inclusive to more people? So,
and I think at this point, we'd be really remiss to point out at this point that Grounded is another really good example, specifically for the arachnophobia mode and the work that they put in to make that a feature.
Absolutely. And so that's where so many times it's these little things and it's a little tweak. A lot of times it's the mindset of a studio or even a single developer of like, oh, it's so huge. Or it's this really big, totally separate thing that I have to do. When really it's most powerful and most innovative when you just weave it in, when it becomes part of the fabric of the game or of the experience or of the service that you're offering. And it's not this separate thing.
No, absolutely
and
not.
so
you want
that's
everyone
where
to play your game, right? So you think, well, I'm making a game about spiders and I don't want people who are scared of spiders to not pick it up. So bada bing, bada boom, we turn them into potatoes with eyes. Brilliant.
And it's something that if that's important to you, you can tweak it. If not, you can play the game the other way.
100%.
So it doesn't take away from the experience of other people. And so that's where it's like, to me, you know, equity or inclusivity in general, like it's not pie. Just because you include this group doesn't mean this group is no longer included. Like, you know, it's like an ocean.
And you know what, on this, I do want to talk about a group specifically that have needed to be included in the conversation in the activity of gaming. And I'm talking about that little beauty I can see sat right behind on the shelf, which is the Xbox Adaptive Controller. Now, I believe you were in the room when that was sort of the brainchild for that happened. Is that correct?
I was. And that was actually, I had just joined gaming a few months before the hackathon that summer. And Bryce Johnson, I'm sure many gamers out there know Bryce, especially if they are involved in inclusive gaming at all. But this is the hackathon tent where so since I was new to gaming, Bryce was kind of that person I kind of latched on at the beginning. And I could go ask him questions about, okay, people keep saying this word. What does that actually mean?
Oh,
you know,
everyone
like,
has one unity,
of those. Right? Or what is blah? And people were like saying stuff. So he was just so amazing with all the questions that I would ask him. But at the hackathon that year, I would just kind of follow Bryce. And he was going to this project and it was about how do we make gaming more inclusive. And that's where he partnered like with Matt Height and a bunch of other people like from Warfighter Engaged. And that is where that project is what ultimately turned into the Xbox Adaptive Controller.
Here it is, which, by the way, for any audio listening fans, we just saw a lovely picture from the outside of the hackathon, and you do have the adaptive controller behind us. But I was wondering if you could talk more about the sort of the feeling and the passion that went sort of behind the creation of the controller, and also the fact that it now does have its own plaque in the Xbox Plaza at LA Live. There it is. I remember seeing this on one of my first E3s. I walked over it, and I think I took a picture of this one as well, because it is such a monumentous occasion.
Yeah, it was really cool just to see the adaptive controller in something like that, especially knowing the journey that we went on to actually get it launched, because it was something so different than we had ever done before within Xbox. And so that journey, it really started with a lot of passionate people that were really committed to making Xbox a place where everyone has fun, right? That's our vision statement for gaming for everyone. And so it was just people really started working on as a side project and then built up momentum and then starting to get some leadership buy-off from the hardware team because there a lot of investment needed to be made up front. And so just starting to get one champion and then another champion and then another champion and people to champion across the org. And people from within the hardware team and the designers just did such a phenomenal job every step of the way. But the thing that I love about this process was we learned so many things from building the adaptive controller that have then applied to many other products that we've created, or really products or experiences. But it was really the role that the community played every step of the way. And so there's a phrase that came out of creating this, and it's not about us without us.
Oh, I love that, KJ. You kidding me? That's so nice.
Yeah, and that phrase I don't even know exactly where that came from, and I probably should know who said that.
If you're listening and it was you, let us know.
Yeah, I know. Please, I should know that because I say the phrase all the time. And so because it is so powerful and it can apply to any community or any experience where if you don't identify with that community, then you shouldn't be the one giving the final feedback or the final decisions. And so it's involving people to make sure that if we're trying to create this experience for you, that it's actually going to be relevant, usable, and also just bring delight, right? So usable to me is like bare minimum, but like what's going to be that thing that just creates this joy and really allows you to play in the way that you want to play. And so the whole process along the way, and then the way the organization rallied around it, even at a Microsoft level. I mean, for it to be the holiday commercial for
Microsoft are very proud of that. Absolutely. You can see how much, for sure.
Yeah, and the marketing team just did such a phenomenal job with how they brought it to market. So that was just, but it's one of those things that is a product. And when you look at it with different, I don't want to say, well, kind of different eyes is what I was going to say, but then it's not, but it's different in a non-traditional way, right? Like where sometimes I think the traditional ways that we look at things just limits ourselves.
Absolutely,
and so this was that thing that if you look at it with different eyes, you release some of those self-imposed limits that you don't even realize you're imposing. But then when you see the impact and see the ripple effect, because it's not just about the people with limited mobility, it's also about the people that they can now play with.
Absolutely.
And it's about their
And we've seen so
caretakers
many, like, from special effect, I'm going to call out specifically some of the content that they have produced of seeing people play racing games with their family, which is traditionally, I mean, as someone who plays a lot of racing games, it's tough for an able-bodied person to play racing games. So to see some of the content they've produced around bringing families together, and again, calling out the holiday commercial you did, which did make me weep when I watched it. It's so much more than just someone switching on and being able to hit start and you know, pull triggers and play games. It's the socio-personal effect of it that's the most enlightening.
Absolutely. And I still cry every time. I know exactly what's going to happen. I still cry. But like the way the marketing team pulled all of that together and it's such a human level, right? That brings it back to that fundamental human need for play. And we can all relate to that. That desire to play. And so I think that experience of creating that and launching that and seeing how it's been received is then opening doors to other conversations internally around what are some other experiences that we could create that are going to bring out that sense of joy that we might have limited ourselves before unintentionally. Because there's another phrase that we like to say a lot is that, and we started this is one that started Gaming for Everyone, is that if you don't intentionally, proactively, and deliberately include, you unintentionally exclude.
Superb. You're good at this.
Like,
you know.
Yeah, well, that
Just
one
in case no one's told you, you're
Yeah.
really good at this.
Yeah. Well, that part of it, because people, I think, want to, but we are wired as humans not to include.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be deliberate about it because we don't do it by default.
And then this
so that's where then
feeds into,
people
like,
judge themselves.
Yeah, and there's like Phil's idea of like wanting to reach all 3 billion gamers, right? That doesn't stop at the door of, it's not a case of making the best AAA title and getting everyone who's ever wanted to buy a console or PC to play it. It's about figuring out who we can access outside of that, who is not being spoken to yet, and unlocking gaming for them too.
Like another marketing win was the Beyond Generations campaign. I don't know if you saw that over the holidays, but where kids are playing with their grandparents and that's forming a bond during this pandemic. Like that's another like great example because we're not thinking of, you know, that grandparents as a target audience, but yet they still have that need to play. And that sense of joy of playing with others. Exactly.
Look, I don't know if you saw it, KJ, but me and the Xbox On team made our own similar version of that. We hung out for the evening with our parents and we all played Game Pass games. And my mum, who, by the way, is savage at Among Us, she played one round and already knew how to lie about fixing wiring, which was terrifying. But I felt a really similar vibe in that, I spoke to her after the fact and she said that because my dad plays FIFA and Call of Duty, to her, it was those games, and growing up we played Grand Theft Auto for fun. So when I played with her and we played Golf with Your Friends, Among Us, Human Fall Flat, she loved. I remember her saying, and this is sort of very similar to what you were saying earlier, of that she didn't know games like that for her existed, and we have since. I remember writing this huge email where I went through Game Pass and I went, you'd like Kato and you'd really like Peggle and you'd like Tetris, and I gave her a list of how to install it all on her laptop or on the Xbox that I also gave them, and she's nuts for it now. She absolutely love it, and I think that is the point, is sort of getting to know who isn't playing and what games they want to play and going, you know what, we have that too if you kind of want to have a go.
Yeah, it sounds like I need to play with your mom.
I mean, you don't, because you'll lose.
Oh, then yeah. that competitiveness will come back.
Oh yeah, no, it runs in the family. Absolutely, it does.
I love that. I totally need to see that video of what you guys did.
It's also on the Microsoft UK YouTube channel. While you're here, you could go watch it after this video.
Consider it done. I'm definitely doing that.
So now I want to pick your brain, because there are going to be people listening to this who perhaps aren't lucky enough but are desiring and dreaming to join this games industry that you are working incredibly hard to make accessible for them. And I want to talk about the minorities that are finding it difficult or have previously found it difficult to come into the industry. And I was wondering if you just have any career advice or any platforms and places to go to, things to think about, anything really, because I just want to get as many people in here as possible so we don't need to keep talking about there being a divide.
Yes, I love that. And I also want to get as many people in here as possible, telling as many different stories as possible. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing too, is that some people don't feel like their story is not that good, or a lot of people aren't going to like it. There's going to be some people that like it because it's going to resonate and connect. Like good stories, anyone on a human level, we connect, and we need more stories. Mm-hmm. And so to get a wider range of stories, we need a wider range of storytellers. And that can come in so many different ways, whether from audio to artists to writing code to, there's such a spectrum of roles. But platform to learn more. So I want to be very specific. So we've partnered quite a bit with the IGDA. Mm-hmm. And the IGDA Foundation on several programs. And one, it's getting people into the industry, and some are then once you are here, how do we keep people in the industry? Retaining talent, and really, yes, and be intentional about how we're growing. It's called Next Gen Leaders. But how are we growing that next generation of leaders? And it's a global program, so it's not just US based. But so I think finding things like that are going to be meaningful to you. Mm-hmm. So that's one of a piece of career advice that I try to have people strip the word should from your vernacular. Yes. Because should is what someone else is telling you or society is telling you should do. But is that going to be meaningful for you? Mm-hmm. And is that going to bring you joy? And is that going to bring you challenge in the way that you like to be challenged and grow and contribute? And ultimately tell your story, because you're telling your story every day through just your lived actions. But so thinking about things that are going to really connect with you on a personal level, but that doesn't have to be every aspect of the opportunity every single day. And so the example that I give there is when I was on the career model team, I spent 7 years on that team. And that is not a job that I loved every aspect of it by any means. But the amount that I learned and the skills that I was then able to take from that job to the job that I really did love, that made all the difference of allowing me to be really effective and have an impact in that job that I really loved. And so I think sometimes people want that job that is their dream job from day one, or even, day 365. Like they're 1 year in, they're like, oh, this isn't my dream job. I don't want it. Sometimes, I'm not saying take a job you hate. That's definitely not it.
Try not to if you can.
Thinking about it, yeah, ideally. But we do got to eat. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But it's really thinking holistically around what that job can teach you. There might be parts about it that you don't like, and that part of that's just reality and growing and learning. Mm-hmm. But no matter what situation you find yourself in, finding things about that job that you can learn that then take and apply to your next job and your next job. And it goes to when I found out that the diversity inclusion, that was an actual job. And I said, someday I'm working on that team. Every job that I had in the 10, 11 years before I got on that team, I incorporated diversity and inclusion into my job. And I figured out a way to incorporate it in a natural way for that job. But I incorporated it. So when I actually went to interview for that job, they're like, hey, what have you done in D&I? And I was like, well, I've never had a title. But here's a bunch of things I've done and I've learned and I've tried.
You can put your heart there, but you also need to put your brain and your words there and sort of work towards it.
Yes, yeah. And so I think it's just thinking about those skills and what brings you joy, and then how do you build the skills and the having the work ethic to build the skills so that you have that experience. And then how does it apply to something else?
Yeah.
So you don't have to have the title in order to get the skills.
See, this is something that people have asked me quite a lot, because, you know, as someone who I run the social media for Xbox UK and Ireland, if you didn't know at this point. I also run the events here as well. So for some, my job is quite desirable, and I get quite a lot of messages like, how do I get into the games industry? You know, blah, 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 blah. And I always say, it's not a case of wanting to join the games industry. You've already got the enthusiasm, check. Next stage is figuring out what you do best and mainline that into every single thing you do. Saying games industry is so open, but are you someone who can tell fantastic stories? Are you really good at PR and talking to people? Are you great at drawing or animating? If that's your niche, work on it, and that is your way in through the door. And I think another really important thing to bring up here, based on you personally, KJ, is you don't even have to be a gamer, my dudes. You just need the passion to want to work with gamers and get people into that. Like, I joined the industry with like 400 hours of World of Warcraft under my belt, but you don't have to do that. Don't feel like that limits you or changes your potential as a candidate, is whether or not you are a gamer. Absolutely not.
Exactly, because even I go back, how do you define a gamer? And I actually ask that question in a lot of presentations I ask, and I'll ask people, do you like playing on a console? How many people raise their hands? Do you like playing on a PC? How many raise their hands? On your phone, how many raise their hands? And then I'll say, okay, those that raise your hands, how many identify as a gamer? Every single time, no matter what the audience is, only a small percentage actually identify as a gamer. But then it's like, okay, how many of you in here enjoy playing? Boom. And so
there you go.
So many times the language gets in the way. And so to me, it's like people come in, they're like, oh, but I'm not a gamer. I'm like, what does that even mean?
But then also there's a stigma around what's a gamer, right? It's someone who does play for many hours, who does like the traditional, for lack of a better word, hardcore games. But the thing I've really appreciated in my time in the industry is I do feel that definition has morphed hugely into just someone who will voluntarily open a game and play it for fun. Hello, welcome to the world of gaming. You are very welcome here.
Yes, absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be on a console.
Nope.
It can be on your phone, right? It's just, to me, it's that who enjoys playing. Boom, you're a gamer.
There you go.
Right?
You're in.
And every single human has that fundamental need. So then it's like, do you enjoy it or not? But we need more people who identify as being a gamer means different things to them. Because there's 3 billion gamers on the planet, and I guarantee you, they all don't describe it in the same way.
No.
And so
absolutely.
If we want to reach those 3 billion gamers in a meaningful way, we need different ways of describing it, different ways of creating experiences. And so we need more people coming in. It's like, if you enjoy play, come on.
Yeah. Come and join us on the fun side.
Yes.
Right, well, KJ, I mean, this is just so warm and so wonderful, and you're such a forward-thinking individual that truly I could talk to you for hours. But before I do, unfortunately, have to let you go, I did remind you at the top of the stream that Shannon had a wonderful question for you. But do you have a question for our wonderful next guest, who I'm not going to tell you who it is, so it doesn't sway your question. But what I will say is that she is, as with everyone on the series, really, she's pretty darn phenomenal. So, you know, what is your question for them?
Okay, so I really wish I could know who it was, but I would say a twist on a question that gets asked a lot. So a lot of times we get asked the question like, what would you tell your former self, or what would you do differently, knowing what you know now? But I would love to ask the next guest, what would you tell your old self to do again? Because what you learned from it or how it panned out, like a risk that you took, turned out really well. So what would you tell your former self to make sure you did again?
Wow, I like that. And you know what? I'm going to be thinking how I'd answer that all day, because that is a brilliant question. That's so good. Cannot wait for the next episode, and hopefully everyone else watching and or listening is very excited for that one too. Just as a heads up, in case you didn't know, we are over on the Microsoft UK YouTube channel if you want to see our wonderful faces and all the videos and pictures we've been talking about. Or if you prefer an audio only option, we do have Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. So take your pick. We'll meet you there. And again, KJ, thank you so much for joining me. You have been an absolute delight. And fingers crossed, I will follow you to GDC very, very soon.
Fingers crossed. You are more than welcome. Would love to have you. Thank you, Charleyy. This has been fun.
No worries. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.